So, but I'm glad to be back.
Keep it just wish Jim a happy birthday.
Well, you know, he's getting to be an old man.
I thought y'all were about the same age.
Well, but he's catching up. You know, as a percentage matter, he's getting closer and closer every day.
And in this job, you get older very quick.
You two guys went in at the same time and seem to have developed a kind of an affinity pretty quickly. Could you maybe tell us a little bit how you met and how you developed that relationship?
Well, sure. We have worked together very, very closely on a lot of matters. Probably began most significantly during the fight over Obamacare, where that was an incredibly important battle. I think Obamacare has been a train wreck. It is the biggest job killer in this country. Millions of Americans have lost their jobs, have been forced into part-time work, have lost their health insurance, have lost their doctors, have seen their premiums skyrocket. And what has impressed me about Jim is that he's got the courage of his convictions, that he actually does what he said he would do, and he honors the promises he made to the men and women of Oklahoma. You know, that shouldn't be something rare. To tell the truth and do what you said you would do ought to be the bare minimum we expect of every elected official. My wife and I, we have two little girls who are 4 and 7. We expect that of our 4-year-olds. And yet in Washington, D.C., to simply stand by your convictions and do what you said you would do is extraordinarily unusual. And Jim exemplifies it every day. And I admire his leadership. He and I have also worked together introducing energy legislation, the American Energy Renaissance Act, the most comprehensive energy legislation that's been filed. He filed it in the House, I filed it in the Senate, that would remove the federal barriers to allowing the private sector to explore and develop our vast energy resources, and would open up new lands to new explorations, would remove the barriers on exporting crude oil, remove the barriers on exporting liquid natural gas, would build the Keystone Pipeline, would prevent the federal government from regulating fracking, would end the federal government's war on coal, would remove the barriers to building new pipelines, remove the barriers to building new refineries. We have the potential for America to be energy independent within a decade. And the single biggest barrier to that happening is misguided policies from the Obama administration and the federal government. Doesn't make any sense that every year we send billions of dollars to foreign nations in the Middle East, many of whom hate us. We ought to be developing our resources here at home and at the same time continuing to encourage and allow the private sector to generate millions of high-paying jobs. Not just high-paying jobs in the oil and gas industry. Obviously here in Oklahoma and Texas, both our states understand the energy industry. It's integral to the culture of both states. But the American energy renaissance is about far more than just the jobs in the energy sector. We have the potential to bring back manufacturing jobs, bring back heavy manufacturing, bring back the steel industry, compete with foreign countries, compete with China, not based on low-cost labor. Lord knows we don't want to compete with China based on low-cost labor. But compete and win based on abundant low-cost energy that God has blessed this country with. Bring back the kind of blue-collar jobs that were the backbone of the American middle class, the jobs that have been decimated under the Obama economy, of working men and women that want to provide for their kids. And it's harder and harder to do that under the Obama economy. And I've been proud to work side by side with Jim. He's got principle and the courage of his conviction, and both of those are very rare in Washington, D.C.
So can we talk about the Obama? Oh, go ahead.
Well, I would just like to add to that since Senator Cruz got to the Senate and since I got to the House, he has made a lot of effort to reach across from the Senate to the House to figure out how we were advancing the legislation that was important to us, and how we could work with the Senate in order to advance the legislation that we think is important to our constituents. So he has made great efforts to reach across the Capitol to the other side. And we've had a lot of great dinners, a lot of very good conversation with members of Congress. and his leadership has been instrumental in passing some very significant pieces of legislation in the House of Representatives, even as a senator. So he's been great about working in a bicameral way, Senate and House together.
What I was going to ask about is the genie's kind of out of the bottle on the Obamacare thing, and if elected president, how do you fix that? I mean, dismantling the entire system maybe not an option. How would you go about that?
I believe we should repeal every single word of Obamacare. Now, there are a lot of politicians in Washington, including a lot of Republicans, who are largely resigned to Obamacare being a permanent feature of our economy. That doesn't make any sense. 5.5 years ago when Obamacare was being debated, reasonable minds perhaps could have differed on whether this thing might work. Today, when we see all the millions of Americans who are out of work, who are working part-time because of Obamacare, who are suffering, it's the biggest job killer in this country right now today. President Obama famously promised Americans, if you like your health insurance plan, you can keep your health insurance plan. We now know that that was a deliberate, repeated falsehood. He said over and over and over again. Roughly 6 million people had their health insurance plan canceled because of Obamacare. He said, if you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor. Those two, by the way, PolitiFact named those the lie of the year, as millions of Americans found they lost their doctor because of Obamacare. President Obama promised Americans the average family will see its health insurance premiums drop by $2,500 a year. In fact, what has happened, the average family has seen its health insurance premiums rise by $3,000 a year. That's $5,500. If you're a single mom working trying to feed your kid, $5,500, that's real money. That's real money that makes it harder and harder and harder to make ends meet. And I would note everyone who's seeing premiums skyrocket, many of them are seeing less health insurance. They're seeing higher deductibles, higher co-pays. And in fact, I've joked more than once. I've said, listen, anyone who's seen their health insurance premiums drop by $2,500, you should go ahead and vote for Hillary Clinton. I'll take everybody else. And we've never had a presidential race decided 100-0, so I'd be glad to welcome that in 2016. And so, but look, your question was, well, gosh, how can you get it repealed? I'll tell you the way you get it repealed. I intend to make 2016 a referendum on repealing Obamacare. And if we come out of November 2016 with a mandate from the people to get rid of this law, that's how we come in with a new president in January 2017. We repeal Obamacare, and then we immediately turn around and pass common sense health care reform that allows people to purchase health insurance across state lines, that expands health savings accounts, that delinks health insurance from employment so that everyone can have health insurance that is personal, that's portable, that is affordable, that keeps government from getting between you and your doctor.
Okay, and now you're getting more towards what I was asking about, which is what do you replace it with? Because what we had before really wasn't working that great.
No. Look, everyone agrees we need health care reform. Step number 1 is repeal every word of Obamacare. Step number 2, I think health care reform should follow some basic principles. Expand competition, expand the marketplace. Empower patients and consumers to make health decisions in consultation with their doctors. And disempower government bureaucrats from getting in between us and our doctors. Now, 3 specific reforms that reflect those principles. Number 1, allowing people to purchase health insurance across state lines. Now, what would that do? That would create a true 50-state national marketplace, which would expand the availability of low-cost, catastrophic health insurance. The biggest barrier to access is cost. If you want to see more access, and all of us want to see more people with access to health insurance, what you want is more choices and lower cost. What does Obamacare do? It's fewer choices and higher cost. The second major reform we should put in place is expanding health savings accounts so that each of us can save in a tax-advantaged way for more routine health care, for prevention and day-to-day needs. And then the third reform is delinking health insurance from employment. A lot of people don't know it's actually an historical accident that most of us get our health insurance from our job. It arose out of World War II when there were wage and price controls in effect. And employers were not able to attract new employees by offering higher wages. So they began offering perks, they began offering health insurance, and the tax laws incentivized that. The problem is, we don't live in the 1950s anymore. We don't live in a society where people tend to go work for one job, one big company for 40 years, retire, and get a gold watch. That's not the world we live in. We live in a mobile, transitory society where people move from industry to industry, from job to job, sometimes from city to city or state to state. And if you or I lose our jobs, we don't lose our life insurance. We don't lose our house insurance, our car insurance. There's no reason on earth we should lose our health insurance. It's the worst one to lose because that's the biggest driver of pre-existing conditions where someone had a coverage, they lose it, and then they can't get a new policy. Instead, what we need to do is we need to work towards making health insurance personal, portable, and affordable.
Last question.
We obviously know that you are very, very passionate about healthcare, but what's the next big thing on your agenda to win the vote of America?
Well, I think America's in crisis right now. I think the stakes in this election have never been higher. And the central issue in 2016 is reigniting the promise of America. Getting back to that fundamental commitment, that fundamental ideal that our kids would have a better life than we did, and their kids would have a better life than they do. How do you do that? You do that, number one, through bringing back jobs and growth and opportunity. For 6 years, we've been trapped in the Obama stagnation. You bring back jobs, growth, and opportunity through tax reform and regulatory reform. Tax reform, adopting a simple flat tax, which would enable every American to fill out his or her taxes on a postcard. And when we do that, we should abolish the IRS. And then regulatory reform, pulling back the regulators that have descended like locusts on small businesses, whether the EPA or the CFPB or the alphabet soup of Washington that are strangling jobs. And the most important regulatory reform is repealing every word of Obamacare. Number two, we need to defend our constitutional rights, all of our constitutional rights. The First Amendment, free speech, religious liberty. The Second Amendment, the right to keep and bear arms, privacy. And third, we need to restore America's leadership in the world. In 6 years, we've seen the consequences of the Obama-Clinton foreign policy. Leading from behind doesn't work. Today, our friends and allies don't trust us. Our enemies don't fear us. And I will tell you, as I've been traveling Oklahoma today, the support we're seeing for our campaign has been incredible. We're seeing courageous conservatives across Oklahoma and all across the country standing up saying, what we're doing doesn't make any sense. It's not working. We need to get back to the common sense principles, the free market principles and constitutional liberties that made America great. You know, in the last 2 months, we've seen over 100,000 people go to tedcruz.org, make contributions online, supporting our campaign. We're seeing the old Reagan coalition coming together. Conservatives and libertarians and evangelicals, young people, Hispanics, African Americans, women, Reagan Democrats. We need to come together and return to the principles that made America great. And I am so optimistic and encouraged because men and women all over this country, courageous conservatives, are waking up to turn this country around.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
We got
Oh, I'm sorry.
Let's let her go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to know, we know that you and Senator Cruz are talking about the Natural Resources Renaissance, and I hope Renaissance Act. We want to just talk a little bit more about just Oklahoma taking part in this and why it's so important, especially for a state like us who have so many natural resources.
Right. So the American Energy Renaissance Act has a number of different provisions in it, but Title I of the bill is about exports. Title I of the bill says that as America, we're going to export. And when you think about national security interests, and this is why I got very involved in this, and Ted Cruz knows that this was one of the key elements that hooked me into it. If we were to export energy, it would be great for the American economy. It would be great for our friends and allies in Eastern and Central Europe that are entirely dependent right now on Russia for their energy, and they are clamoring for our energy. In fact, ambassador after ambassador comes to my office, and I'm sure your office.
Absolutely.
And they say, we would like American energy because right now we are entirely dependent on Russia, and that limits what we are able to do when it comes to sanctions against Russia. We want to help them with that. So it would be great for the American economy to export energy. It would be great for the Oklahoma economy. It would be devastating for the Russian economy. This is an important point that most people don't understand. Russia receives 50% of its revenue to the central government of Russia. 50% of its revenue is export of energy. 83% of that energy goes to Eastern and Central Europe. If we were to export our energy, we could have a crippling effect on the central government of Russia, at the same time providing security to our friends and allies in Eastern and Central Europe. This is a policy that should be implemented. The challenge we have is not that Vladimir Putin won't let us export energy. The problem we have is that President Obama won't let us export energy. We've passed, in fact, the American Energy Renaissance Act. We've taken Title I of that bill and passed it in the House of Representatives, and Harry Reid is preventing it from getting a vote in the Senate. These are the kind of things that we've got to get past, because when it comes to energy, we truly need an all-of-the-above strategy, not an all-of-the-above-ground strategy. It's not just wind and solar, but we need to use an all-of-the-above strategy for the American excellence that we've all come to expect. That's just Title I of the bill. When you go down the rest of the bill, we're talking about being able to drill in our own country. We need states to be able to regulate federal lands within those states. And I tell this to my constituents all the time, and they agree. Oklahomans love Oklahoma. We love Oklahoma land. We love Oklahoma air. We're not going to do anything to damage it, but right now we're constrained by the federal government. And the tribes are constrained as well. We need Oklahoma to regulate federal land in Oklahoma. That's another part of the bill. We need to rein in the EPA. We need to have more expansion of refining in this country. Bottom line is this: we need to unleash the American Energy Renaissance, which is what we call the bill, the American Energy Renaissance Act. And if we were to do this, it'd be great for our country. Instead, what we've got is we are crippling and restricting our own economy and benefiting the economy of our competitors and in many cases our enemies. Look, you talk about Iran, right? Part of this Iran deal, they're going to be able to export energy. Iran is going to export energy because of American policy, and America can't export energy because of the same American policy. If this doesn't concern every American, nothing will. And of course, you know, the implications to our district here in the state of Oklahoma, and I'm sure the state of Texas, are huge. So this is an important bill. Certainly we can catch you later and talk more about it if you're interested.
Well, and you know, Texas and Oklahoma agree on just about everything, well, except football. and we agree on the need for a strong national defense and jobs and economic growth, and that's what this is all about. So, thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys.